The marketplace was alive with colors and sounds, stalls glowing with strange lights, traders shouting prices, and people rushing in every direction. It was a place where no one cared about anyone, only about buying and selling among this restless crowd. An old alien woman stood still. Her body was bent, her skin pale with age, and her clothes torn and dusty. She looked around with tired eyes, holding a small pouch close to her chest. She tried to speak, but her voice was broken. Weak and shaking, people passed by. Not even turning their heads, some laughed quietly. Some frowned at her as if she was only a burden in their way. She stretched out her trembling hand toward a passing merchant, trying to ask for help. The man pushed her aside and moved on. She turned to a group of alien youths, but they ignored her. Covering their mouths to hide cruel laughter, she whispered words that no one understood, her voice almost lost in the noise. To the crowd, she was nothing, just another poor alien. Old and useless, to her every second was pain, and every step felt heavy. Her eyes were full of desperation, but they were also full of something else, something hidden, a secret buried deep inside her. And then, among the countless faces, one pair of eyes stopped. It was a human teen, maybe 16 years old. His name was Daniel. He was not rich, not powerful, not special in the eyes of the world. He was just a boy who often came to the market to help his family. Daniel noticed her when nobody else did. He saw how she shook, how her lips moved as if calling out silently. His heart pulled him forward. At first he hesitated. What if this was some trick? What if others laughed at him too? But when he saw her stumble, almost falling into the dust, he could not walk away. He rushed to her side and caught her arm. Her skin was cold, her hand fragile like dry leaves. The old alien lady looked at him with wide eyes, her lips trembling. She whispered something in her broken language, words he could not understand. "Don't worry," Daniel said softly, though he knew she might not know his language. He guided her to a quiet corner of the market, away from the rushing crowd. He gave her some water from the bottle he carried. Her hand shook as she held it, but she drank slowly, gratefully. A faint smile touched her cracked lips. The people around stared. Some shook their heads. Some pointed fingers and laughed. "The human boy is wasting his time," one said. "She is just a worthless old thing," another mocked. Daniel felt their eyes on him, but he ignored them. The old woman touched her pouch and pulled it closer. She leaned toward him and whispered again. This time he caught a word, strange but clear enough to echo in his mind. "Danger," she said. Her voice was weak, but the weight of the word made Daniel's heart beat faster. Before he could ask more, her hand slipped from her pouch. A small shard of crystal fell into his lap. It glowed faintly, pulsing with soft blue light. Daniel's breath caught. The glow was not natural. It was alive. He looked around quickly, hoping no one saw it. But in the distance, two armored figures were watching. Their helmets shone under the market lights and their eyes fixed on the shard. A cold wave of fear washed over Daniel. The old woman clutched his hand, her grip stronger than he expected. Her eyes, once weak and cloudy, now glimmered with strange fire. She whispered again, her voice trembling but urgent. "Help, sanctuary." Daniel did not understand all her words, but he understood the look in her eyes. She was not just a lost old woman. She was someone carrying a secret that others wanted to bury. A secret hidden inside the glowing shard. The noise of the market felt distant now, replaced by the pounding of his heart. The armored figures began moving through the crowd. Pushing people aside, Daniel felt the old woman squeeze his hand tighter. For the first time in his life, Daniel realized he stood at the edge of something dangerous, something bigger than himself. Everyone else ignored her, but he had stopped. And now, because of one simple act of kindness, he was about to step into a mystery that could change everything. The shard glowed brighter in his hand. The crowd carried on as if nothing was happening. But Daniel knew deep inside that nothing would ever be the same again. Daniel sat with the old alien woman in the quiet corner of the market. The noise of the crowd faded, replaced by the soft sound of her weak breathing. Her hands trembled as she tried to hold the water bottle. Daniel steadied her grip, making sure she drank enough. For the first time in hours, her shoulders relaxed a little. The boy's eyes stayed on her. He noticed how thin she was, how her bones pressed against her wrinkled skin. Her clothes were not just dirty. They were torn in strange patterns as if burned or slashed in some forgotten struggle. Her eyes, though cloudy with age, carried a spark that made Daniel uneasy. It was not the look of someone ordinary, It was the look of someone carrying a burden too heavy. Can you understand me? Daniel asked softly. The woman tilted her head, then shook it slowly. She whispered in her broken voice, sounds that carried no meaning to him. But her tone was pleading, desperate. Daniel sighed. He could not understand her language, but kindness did not need words. He pulled a small piece of bread from his bag and offered it. She stared at it for a moment, then slowly took it with both hands as she ate. Her lips trembled as if she wanted to thank him. Nearby, some merchants noticed them. One smirked. Look at the human boy. Feeding trash, another laughed. He thinks he is a hero. The words stung, but Daniel ignored them. He knew what he was doing felt right. The old alien touched her pouch again. Her fingers lingered as if she was afraid it might be stolen. Daniel saw how carefully she guarded it. Finally, she pulled it open and revealed a small fragment of crystal, different from the one that had fallen earlier. She placed it on her palm and held it out for him to see. The shard pulsed faintly with a rhythm. Daniel's eyes widened as the crystal projected faint lines of light into the air. It was like a small map, broken, incomplete, but glowing with strange symbols. He leaned closer, trying to make sense of it. The old woman's voice cracked as she spoke again. This time he caught two words, faint but clear. Key, danger. Daniel's heart pounded. What was this crystal, and why did she give it to him? He looked at her face, and though she was frail, her eyes begged him to understand. She was not just asking for food or water. She was asking for protection, for trust. A shadow fell over them. Daniel looked up and saw one of the armored guards watching from across the street. The man's helmet reflected the market lights. His gaze was locked on the glowing shard. Panic surged through Daniel. He quickly closed her hand over the crystal and whispered, "Hide it." She obeyed, clutching it to her chest. The guard whispered something into his communicator, and two more figures began moving closer through the crowd. Daniel's breath quickened, his legs trembled. But he forced himself to stay calm. "Come on," he whispered to her. He helped her to her feet. She was weak, leaning heavily on his shoulder, but she managed to take small steps. Her trust in him was clear. They moved deeper into the market alleys, weaving between stalls. Daniel's mind raced. He was just a teenager. Why was he suddenly running from armored soldiers with an old alien woman by his side? But when he looked at her, he knew why. Because no one else would. The woman tried to speak again. Her words broken, her voice shaking. She pointed to the crystal, and then toward the far side of the city. "Sanctuary," she whispered. Daniel did not know what sanctuary she meant, but the urgency in her tone made it clear. If they stayed, they would be caught behind them. The crowd shifted as the guards pushed their way through. Their metallic steps clanged against the stone. Daniel felt fear bite into his chest, but he tightened his grip on her hand. They turned into a narrow passage between two buildings. The air smelled of dust and smoke. The woman stumbled, nearly falling. Daniel held her steady. "Stay with me," he whispered, his voice firm, though inside he felt like shaking. From behind he heard shouts. The guards were close. Daniel's eyes darted around, looking for escape. He spotted a set of old wooden stairs leading up the side of a warehouse. Without hesitation, he helped her climb step by step, until they reached the roof. From the height, Daniel could see the market spreading below them like a sea of moving lights. The guards searched the streets, their helmets glowing. But up here, hidden in the shadows, Daniel and the old woman caught their breath. She leaned against him, her chest rising and falling with heavy effort. Her hand still clutched the crystal. Her eyes met his, and for the first time, Daniel saw tears there, not just of fear, but of relief. In that moment, Daniel realized something. This was no longer just an old alien woman needing food. This was someone carrying a secret that others would kill to silence. And somehow, by a single act of kindness, he had become the only one she could trust. The night air grew colder. The stars above looked sharp and clear. Daniel whispered, "I don't know what this is, but I'll help you." The woman's lips curved into the faintest smile. She whispered one word, soft but filled with hope. "Human." And in that fragile moment, as the city lights flickered below and the guards hunted in the streets, Daniel understood his life had just changed forever. The night stretched long over the city, but Daniel did not sleep. He sat with the old alien woman on the rooftop, watching the glow of the shard as it pulsed faintly between her hands. The streets below had quieted, though armored guards still searched. Their metallic boots echoed against the stone roads, hunting for the lost alien and the human who had helped her. Daniel's mind raced. He was only a teenager, and yet he felt the weight of something far greater pressing on him. He had helped an old woman when no one else cared, and now he was holding a secret that others were desperate to find. The alien woman shifted. Her weak hands trembled as she placed the glowing shard between them. She tapped the crystal with one finger. The light inside it grew stronger. It projected faint lines into the air, forming shapes that shimmered like stars. Daniel's eyes widened. It was not just light, it was a map. The glowing lines twisted into paths and circles, symbols marking locations he had never seen before. Some looked like mountains, others like ruins. And at the center was one glowing symbol brighter than the rest. The woman's voice cracked as she whispered, "Sanctuary." She pointed a thin finger at the bright symbol. Daniel stared at it, his heart thumped. Sanctuary, was this a place, a hidden refuge, or something more? He leaned closer. "What is this?" he asked softly. But the woman only repeated the word again. Sanctuary. Her eyes glimmered with urgency. Daniel touched the map projection. The lines shifted as if alive. The shard reacted to him, recognizing his touch. The glowing paths rearranged themselves, showing a clearer route toward the center. The woman gasped, her lips trembled. It was as if she had been waiting for this moment. From the streets below came a sudden crash. The guards had broken into another building. Searching every corner, Daniel felt his stomach tighten. They would not give up easily. They wanted the shard, and they would tear apart the city to find it. He looked at the woman again. "We have to move," he whispered. She nodded weakly, clutching the shard. He helped her down from the roof step by step, and together they slipped into the maze of back alleys. As they walked, Daniel kept glancing at the glowing shard in her hand. He realized it was not just an object. It was a key, a guide, and perhaps even a weapon. The thought chilled him. Why would an old alien woman carry such a thing? And why had she trusted it to him? They reached a quieter part of the city. Where the buildings were broken and abandoned, the woman collapsed against a wall. Breathing hard, Daniel quickly gave her water. She drank slowly, then raised the shard again. The projection flickered in the air, casting strange blue light across the cracked walls. Daniel studied it carefully. The glowing paths were not random. They connected different points, almost like doors or hidden places. He noticed some symbols were dim, as if locked. Only the central one shone bright. The sanctuary. "What are you showing me?" Daniel murmured. His voice filled with awe. The woman looked at him. Her cloudy eyes focused with sudden sharpness. She touched her chest, then touched his, and then pointed to the map. She whispered slowly, "Chosen." Daniel froze. The word echoed inside his mind. Was she calling him chosen? He wanted to laugh at the thought. He was just an ordinary boy. He had no power, no special skills. He was not a soldier or a leader. But her eyes told him otherwise before he could ask again. A loud metallic sound rang out nearby. The woman quickly closed her pouch. Hiding the shard, Daniel pulled her into the shadows. His heart hammered in his chest. The guards were close. Their voices echoed in the night. "Find the shard," one barked. "It cannot leave the city?" Daniel held his breath, pressing against the wall with the woman beside him. The light of their helmets swept past, then faded. The old alien woman leaned against him, whispering broken words he could barely understand. But her tone was urgent. She pointed toward the map again. Daniel realized she wanted him to guide her. He was now part of this mission, whether he wanted it or not. They continued deeper into the ruins until they reached an old underground passage. The entrance was hidden behind broken stones. The woman motioned for him to push them aside. Together they entered. The air inside was cold. Damp and filled with echoes, Daniel lit a small torch he carried. The flame flickered against the walls, revealing strange carvings. Alien symbols etched deep into the stone. The woman touched them with her fingers, whispering in her language. Her voice was reverent, almost like prayer. The shard pulsed brighter in her hand. The map projection shifted again, this time marking their location. Daniel realized it was guiding them step by step. He felt a chill crawl down his spine. This was not random, this was destiny. As they moved through the dark tunnel, Daniel couldn't help but think of the life he had left behind. Just hours ago, he was an ordinary boy helping his family in the market. Now he was running from soldiers, protecting a mysterious alien, and following a glowing map that seemed alive. He looked at her again. She was frail, old, and nearly broken. Yet she carried something that others feared, She carried secrets of another world, secrets that could change everything. Daniel's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden rumble. The ground shook, dust fell from the ceiling. He turned quickly and saw shadows moving at the tunnel entrance. The guards had found them. The woman gripped his hand tightly. Her voice broke into a desperate cry. "Run!" Daniel grabbed her arm and pulled her forward. Deeper into the unknown passage, the shard's glow lit their path, guiding them toward the heart of the map. The sanctuary was waiting, but so was the danger. And as the tunnel closed around them, Daniel knew there was no turning back. The underground passage stretched far, its walls damp with dripping water. Daniel's footsteps echoed in the dark as he guided the old alien woman deeper inside. The shard in her hand pulsed brighter with every step, casting ghostly blue light across the stone. Behind them came the sharp clang of armored boots. The guards had entered the tunnel. Their voices rang out, harsh and cold. "Do not let them escape." Daniel's heart pounded. He had never been hunted before. He had never felt the weight of danger pressing so close. The woman stumbled, her weak body slowing them down. Daniel tightened his grip on her arm. "Come on, just a little more," he whispered. His voice trembled, but his resolve did not break. He would not leave her, not after everything. The tunnel twisted left, then right, opening into a wider chamber. Strange carvings glowed faintly on the walls, symbols older than time itself. The shard reacted, projecting a path forward. Daniel realized the shard was not only a map, but also a guide through hidden ways. Suddenly, a beam of light sliced the darkness behind them. A guard's helmet light swept across the walls. Daniel felt a surge of fear. He pulled the woman quickly into a side passage, just as the soldiers stormed into the chamber. They pressed against the cold stone, breathing shallow. Daniel could hear the mechanical hiss of the guard's armor as they scanned the chamber. "They are close," one growled. "The shard cannot be lost again." Daniel's hand trembled. But the woman placed her frail fingers over his. Her touch was steady. Her cloudy eyes burned with quiet fire. She whispered one word: "Trust." Something in her voice calmed him. Daniel nodded and waited. The guards' heavy steps moved past, their lights fading as they searched another tunnel. Only then did Daniel exhale. They continued forward, deeper and deeper. The passage narrowed until Daniel had to crouch. The air was stale, filled with dust. But the shard glowed brighter, guiding them like a living lantern. At last they reached another chamber. This one was different. Its walls were carved with spirals and circles that seemed to move under the shard's glow. At the center stood a stone pillar, cracked with age. The old alien woman stepped forward. Her weak body straightened slightly. Her hand trembled as she placed the shard into a hollow at the top of the pillar. Instantly, the chamber lit up with lines of blue energy, spreading across the walls like veins of light. Daniel stared in awe. The spirals and circles formed into a clearer map. This time it was larger, stretching across half the chamber wall, and at the farthest point, glowing brighter than ever, was the mark of the sanctuary. The woman pointed, her voice whispering broken words. Daniel caught only fragments. "Key, Dorsey last hope." Her eyes watered, not with fear, but with relief. Before Daniel could speak, the chamber shook. A blast echoed from behind as the guards forced their way through. Their armored figures filled the tunnel entrance, weapons raised. The glow of the shard had drawn them like moths to flame. "Hand over the relic," one guard commanded, his metallic voice cold and merciless. Daniel's breath caught. He looked at the woman. She clutched the shard again. Pulling it from the pillar, the light dimmed. But the path had been marked in Daniel's memory. The guards advanced, step by step. Daniel's mind screamed for escape. He saw another tunnel at the far side of the chamber, smaller and narrow, without thinking. He grabbed the woman's hand and ran. The guards shouted, weapons firing. Bolts of red light slammed into the stone. Sparks rained across the chamber. Daniel ducked low, guiding the woman through the narrow passage. The tunnel was so tight their shoulders scraped the walls. The sound of boots thundered behind them. The chase had truly begun. The woman stumbled, nearly falling. Daniel pulled her up, his heart racing. He could hear the guards closing in. The tunnel suddenly opened into a steep slope, loose stones rolling underfoot. Daniel half carried, half dragged the woman down, sliding into the darkness. They tumbled into another chamber, smaller, filled with broken statues and dust. Daniel coughed, pulling himself up. The woman wheezed, clutching the shard tightly to her chest. The guards' lights appeared at the top of the slope. Daniel's pulse raced. He looked around desperately. At the far end of the chamber was a small crack in the wall, just wide enough for him to squeeze through. "This way," he whispered urgently. He pushed her through first, ignoring the scraping stone against his skin. The passage beyond was pitch black, but they had no choice. Blaster fire echoed as the guards entered the chamber behind them. Daniel and the woman crawled through the narrow crack, dust filling their throats. The shard's glow was their only guide. At last the crack opened into a wider cavern. Daniel pulled the woman through and collapsed beside her. His chest burned with exhaustion, but his grip on her never loosened. The cavern was vast, with ceilings lost in shadows. Strange crystal formations jutted from the floor, glowing faintly. The woman looked around and whispered something Daniel did not understand. Her voice carried both awe and sorrow. Daniel looked back at the crack they had crawled through. He could still hear the muffled voices of the guards. They would not stop, not until they had the shard. He turned to the woman, his voice firm. "We can't keep running forever. Where does this map lead? What is this sanctuary?" His questions were desperate. The woman's lips trembled, her words came out slow, heavy with meaning. "Last light. Last home." Her hand pressed the shard into Daniel's chest. Her eyes shone with both fear and trust. The cavern trembled again as the guards forced their way closer. Daniel realized this was no simple journey, it was a race. A chase between hope and despair, and somehow, he had become the one carrying the future. He looked at the shard glowing against his chest. His heart beat fast. The chase was not over. It was only beginning. The cavern stretched endlessly, filled with glowing crystals that pulsed like stars trapped underground. Daniel guided the old alien woman across the uneven ground. Every step was slow, every breath heavy, but she never let go of the shard. Her thin hands clutched it tightly, as if the entire weight of her life rested inside it. Behind them, the faint echo of armored boots reminded Daniel that the guards were still searching. He could not see them, but he knew they would not give up. The shard was too important, and the woman carried secrets they wanted hidden forever. Daniel stopped for a moment, his chest rising and falling with exhaustion. He turned to her, his voice low but firm. "Who are you? Why are they chasing you? Why is this shard so important?" The woman's cloudy eyes shimmered in the glow of the crystals. For a long time she said nothing. Only her trembling breath filled the silence. Then slowly, she raised the shard and pressed it against her chest. The light spread across her body and the air around them shifted. The glow revealed markings on her skin, symbols hidden under years of dust and wrinkles. They glowed faintly, like an ancient script written on her flesh. Daniel's eyes widened. He had never seen anything like it. Her voice cracked as she began to speak. Her words were broken. But this time Daniel understood enough. Not beggar. Not forgotten. Guardian. She placed her hand on the shard, and then on the cavern wall. The crystal formations responded. Glowing brighter, the entire cavern seemed alive. Daniel's breath caught, Guardian. She was not just some poor lost alien. She was something far greater. The woman lowered her head, her voice soft with sorrow. Long ago, we protected doors. Her eyes filled with tears. Betrayed, hunted, silenced. Daniel listened, his heart heavy. She had once been part of something noble, a protector of something ancient. Now she was broken, chased, and ignored by the world above. Her thin hand touched Daniel's shoulder. "You saw me," she whispered. Her voice shook but carried strength. "Others, blind, cruel, but you, human, heartstrong." Daniel swallowed hard. He had only acted out of kindness, but to her, that kindness had meant everything in her eyes. He was not just a boy. He was someone chosen by fate. He looked at the shard again. This sanctuary. What is it? What's inside? The woman's eyes flickered with fear and hope at the same time. She spoke slowly. Knowledge. Power at last light if they take it. And... Her voice trailed into silence. Daniel's chest tightened. This was bigger than he could have imagined. The shard was not only a key, it was a door to something that could save or destroy worlds. And this frail alien woman had carried its secret alone for years. He wanted to ask more, but a sudden crash echoed through the cavern. The sound of metal against stone. The guards had found another entrance. Daniel grabbed her hand. "We need to move." They hurried along the cavern floor, the shard's glow lighting the path. The crystals around them hummed faintly, reacting to its energy. Daniel felt like they were walking through the veins of a living world. The woman stumbled again, her legs giving out. Daniel caught her before she fell. He could feel how weak she was. Her body was failing her, but her spirit was not. She pressed the shard into his hands. Her voice was firm despite her weakness. You carry now. Daniel froze. Me. He looked at the shard glowing in his palms. It felt heavy, heavier than stone, as if it carried history itself. The woman nodded slowly. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. Human. Chosen. Before Daniel could respond, the cavern shook violently. Red beams of energy struck the walls as the guards appeared from the shadows. Their weapons burned against the crystal formations, shattering some into dust. Run, the woman whispered urgently. She pushed Daniel forward. Even as her frail body trembled, he wanted to argue, but her eyes burned with determination. She was not afraid of herself being caught. She was afraid of him failing. Daniel tightened his grip on the shard and pulled her with him. Together they raced through the glowing cavern, weaving between crystal pillars. The guards' shouts echoed louder, their lights flashing closer. They reached another passage. Narrower and darker, Daniel guided her inside. The tunnel twisted sharply, leading them downward. The deeper they went, the stronger the shard glowed. The woman leaned close to him, her voice faint but steady. My name? Elira. Daniel looked at her, startled. It was the first time she had told him her true name. It felt sacred, heavy with meaning. Elira's eyes shone with tired pride. Last, guardian of the sanctuary, her words echoed in the tunnel. Daniel's heart pounded. He was no longer running with a stranger. He was running with the last protector of something ancient and powerful. At that moment, he understood the truth. She had been ignored, mocked, and left to suffer. But she was more than what the world saw. She was Elira, the final keeper of secrets that could change everything. And now, by helping her, Daniel was no longer just a boy. He had become part of her legacy. The tunnel opened into another chamber. This one darker, colder. The shard pulsed stronger than ever, guiding them toward the next step of their journey. Elira's voice was weak, but her words were clear. Protect it. Promise me. Daniel looked at her, his voice steady despite the fear inside him. I promise. And as the guards' footsteps grew louder behind them, Daniel felt the weight of his promise settle deep into his soul. The tunnel stretched deeper, colder, every step echoing like a warning. Daniel carried the shard close to his chest. Its glow lit the way ahead. Painting the stone walls with shifting blue light, Elira, the old alien woman, leaned on him heavily. Her body was frail, but her eyes still burned with a strange fire. The sound of the guards had faded, but Daniel knew they were not gone. They would follow, always. Drawn to the shard like predators chasing blood, he tightened his grip on Elira's hand. We just have to keep moving, he whispered. His voice was firm, though his heart was racing. The tunnel finally opened into a wide cavern. The ceiling stretched so high it disappeared into darkness. Huge crystal towers rose from the ground. Humming softly, their glow responded to the shard. As if welcoming its return, Elira stopped for a moment. Her lips trembling. Home, she whispered. Daniel looked at her in confusion. Home. The word sounded broken from her lips, but also full of longing. Elira's weak fingers brushed one of the crystals. It pulsed brighter, singing with soft energy. Daniel shivered. He realized this place was not just stone. It was alive. They moved slowly across the cavern. Stepping between glowing towers, Elira's steps faltered often. Daniel supported her, whispering encouragement. He had never imagined himself as a guide for someone like her, but now he felt protective, like a grandson leading his grandmother through danger. Tell me more, Daniel urged gently. What is this sanctuary? Elira's breath was shallow, but her words carried weight. Before betrayal, sanctuary held knowledge, memories, power of stars. She paused to cough, her voice breaking. We, guardians, protected doors kept balance. Daniel frowned. And the soldiers. Her eyes darkened. They serve the betrayers. Those who fear truth, they want shard. To seal or destroy sanctuary, never to open. Daniel's chest tightened. He had thought this was only about survival, but now he understood it was about truth itself. If the wrong hands claimed the shard, the sanctuary would vanish forever. And with it a chance to change everything. They pressed forward, following the shard's glow as it led them to a narrow passage at the cavern's edge. The air grew colder, filled with the scent of ancient stone. Hours passed. Or maybe minutes. Time felt strange underground. Daniel's legs ached, but he did not complain. Elira leaned heavier against him, her breath shallow, but she never let go of his arm. Finally, the passage opened again. This chamber was smaller, but its walls were covered with carvings, thousands of symbols etched into stone, glowing faintly under the shard's light. Elira's eyes filled with tears, her voice cracked. Names. All who came before. All guardians. Daniel looked at the walls in awe. Each symbol seemed alive, whispering stories of forgotten centuries. He realized Elira was not just the last guardian. She was the last link to an unbroken chain of protectors stretching through time. Suddenly the ground trembled. A distant roar echoed through the tunnels. Daniel's heart jumped. The guards had triggered something, or perhaps the cavern itself reacted to their presence. "We can't stay," Daniel said quickly. He guided Elira toward the far end of the chamber, where another passage descended, but Elira stopped. She placed her frail hand on the wall of names. Her lips moved in silent prayer. Daniel wanted to rush her, but the look on her face froze him. She was saying goodbye to her people. After a long moment, she turned back to him, her face pale but her eyes shining. "We go." They entered the downward tunnel. The shard glowed brighter, showing that they were close. Daniel's chest burned with exhaustion, but hope gave him strength. The thought that they were near the sanctuary pushed him forward. At last, the tunnel opened into a breathtaking sight. A vast underground canyon stretched before them. Its floor was covered with rivers of glowing light, and at the far end, built into the rock, stood a massive gate of stone and crystal. It shimmered faintly as if waiting. Daniel froze, his mouth dry. This was no ordinary door. This was the sanctuary. Elira's body shook. She leaned against him, her voice trembling. There it is." Daniel's eyes widened. The gate was beautiful, but also terrifying. Its sheer size made him feel small. The shard pulsed in his hand, glowing brighter than ever. But before relief could sink in, shouts echoed behind them. The metallic roar of guards filled the tunnel they had left. Their lights flashed across the canyon. Growing closer, Daniel's heart hammered. There was no time. He looked at Elira. Her face was pale, her breath shallow. She might not survive another chase. He clenched his jaw. "We're going to make it." Together they stumbled down the rocky slope, crossing the glowing rivers. The shard's light guided their steps, but the guards' shouts grew louder, weapons firing in the distance. Bolts of red energy struck the ground near them, shaking the earth. Elira nearly collapsed. Daniel caught her. He pulled her arm around his shoulders and carried her weight. "Just a little more," he gasped. His legs shook, but he did not stop. They reached the base of the massive gate. The stone shimmered under the shard's light. Ancient symbols glowed faintly. Elira raised her weak hand, pointing. "Keyhole, center." Daniel looked closer. At the heart of the gate was a small hollow, shaped perfectly for the shard. His hands trembled as he held it. The guards' boots thundered closer, their weapons charged with energy. Daniel looked at Elira. Her eyes were wet with tears. Her lips whispered, "Do it." With a deep breath, Daniel pressed the shard into the hollow. The gate roared to life. Lines of light spread across the stone. Symbols ignited one by one. The entire canyon shook as if the world itself was waking. The guards shouted in panic, firing wildly. But the gate's glow formed a barrier, pushing them back. Daniel held Elira close as the massive doors began to part. Beyond them was light brighter than anything he had ever seen. And in that moment, Daniel knew the sanctuary was opening, and their journey was only at its beginning. The great stone gate trembled as its massive doors slid open. Light poured out so bright that Daniel had to shield his eyes. The cavern shook with deep rumbling, and the air filled with the sound of energy flowing like a living river. Elira, the old alien woman, leaned heavily on Daniel. Her weak body shook, but her eyes shone with awe. "Sanctuary," she whispered, her voice cracked, yet carried a strength he had never heard before. Behind them, the armored guards shouted, their weapons fired. But the glowing barrier from the gate held strong. Red beams fizzled harmlessly against the light. Daniel knew the barrier would not last forever. They had only moments. "Come on," he urged, helping Elira forward. Together they stepped across the threshold. The blinding light softened into a golden glow, and the world before them revealed itself. The sanctuary was breathtaking. A vast chamber stretched endlessly. filled with floating platforms of crystalline stone. Rivers of glowing energy flowed through the air. Suspended like ribbons, ancient machines hummed silently. Untouched by time, the air felt pure. Charged with something sacred, Daniel's breath caught. He had never imagined such beauty. Elira's trembling lips curved into a faint smile. Her eyes filled with tears. "We kept it. Safe," she whispered, "even in death." Still here. At the center of the sanctuary stood a great pedestal. It pulsed with light, calling to the shard in Daniel's hand. He walked forward slowly, each step heavy with fear and wonder. Elira touched his arm, her voice weak but steady. "Place it." "There." Daniel hesitated. He looked at her. "What will happen?" Her eyes, though cloudy, seemed to see far beyond the present. "Truth," she whispered. "Hope, or end," Daniel's heart pounded. His hands shook as he placed the shard into the pedestal. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the entire sanctuary blazed with light. The floating platform shifted. The rivers of energy surged brighter. Symbols appeared in the air, forming great circles of knowledge. Ancient voices echoed like whispers across the chamber. Daniel felt as if the past itself had awakened. Elira's body shook violently. She fell to her knees. Daniel rushed to her. "Elira," he cried. Her breathing was shallow, her strength fading. But her hand gripped his tightly. Her voice trembled. "Listen, human, you must carry what we guarded. You saw me, when all others turned away. You are worthy." Daniel's throat tightened. He had never thought of himself as worthy. He was just a boy who had chosen kindness, yet in her eyes, that simple kindness had changed everything. The sanctuary's light swirled, forming images, planets, stars, battles long past. Daniel saw visions of guardians like Elira standing against darkness. He saw betrayal, the fall of her people, and their desperate attempt to hide the sanctuary's secrets. Finally, he saw the last image, Elira herself, younger, strong, bowing to protect the shard until someone pure of heart would take it. Tears stung Daniel's eyes. He looked at her frail form, bent and broken. "Why me?" he whispered. Elira smiled faintly. "Because you did not walk away." Her grip weakened, but her words carried peace. "Guardians live not in power, but in kindness." Daniel's chest ached. He wanted to beg her to hold on, but he could see the truth in her eyes. Her time had come. She had carried her burden for centuries, and now she was passing it to him. The pedestal glowed brighter. A beam of energy flowed into the shard, then into Daniel's chest. He gasped as warmth filled him. Knowledge poured into his mind, symbols, words, visions. He felt the sanctuary's history become part of him. Elira's breathing slowed. Her hand slipped from his, her eyes closed, but her lips curved into a final smile. "Free. At last," she whispered. Then she was still. Daniel knelt beside her, tears running down his face. For a long moment, the world was silent except for the hum of the sanctuary. He pressed his forehead against her hand, whispering, "Thank you, Elira. I won't fail you." A thunderous crash shook the sanctuary. The gate's barrier finally broke. The guards stormed inside, their weapons ready. But as they entered, the sanctuary's light flared, the machines awoke, and ancient defenses rose from the ground. The guards fired wildly, but beams of pure energy struck them back. The sanctuary itself rejected their presence. Daniel stood tall, the shard glowing in his chest. The knowledge inside him whispered. He was now the guardian. He faced the soldiers with steady eyes. For the first time, he did not feel like a boy. He felt the weight of generations behind him. Elira's legacy, the sanctuary's power, and the strength of his own choice. The guards hesitated, their weapons faltering against the sanctuary's defense. One shouted, "He holds the key." Another cried, "Retreat." In panic, they fled back through the shattered gate. Swallowed by darkness, Daniel stood alone in the golden glow, Elira's body resting peacefully at his side, the sanctuary quiet once more. He looked at the endless platforms, the glowing rivers of knowledge. He understood now. This was not only a place of power. It was a library, a weapon, and a hope for the future. And he was its protector. He clenched his fists, his voice firm. "I'll protect it. I'll protect her memory. And I'll protect the truth." The sanctuary pulsed gently, as if answering him, its light wrapped around him. Not as a burden, but as a promise.